Aaron lay crumpled on the linoleum floor, eyes glazed, whispering his dog's name through clenched teeth as sirens wailed in the distance. Beside him, empty pill bottles, prescribed, then stolen. A war hero brought down, not by battle, but by bureaucratic cruelty. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Aaron's days became an arithmetic of endurance. How many milligrams left? How many hours to stretch each dose? He grew gaunt, not just from the cancer eating away at his spine, but from the stress of anticipation, the agony of being made to beg for what was rightfully his. Pain had a language, and his body spoke it fluently. Tremors in his hands, sweat blooming at his temples, sleepless nights curled in on himself while the world outside slept soundly. He kept records now, a spiral-bound notebook with dates, times, quantities, every call logged, every excuse quoted verbatim. Claire helped where she could, bringing groceries, writing emails on his behalf when his fingers cramped too badly to type. But nothing changed. Ronnie remained. The bottles continued to come light. What wounded Aaron more than the physical pain was the implication that he was either invisible or lying. That his word, a veteran's word, wasn't enough to challenge the indifferent machinery of bureaucracy. Each day he stared at the framed photograph on his wall, his younger self in uniform, standing between two laughing comrades, both long gone now, and felt a cold chasm widen between who he had been and who he was allowed to be now. Then came the day he tried to escalate directly to the regional VA office. He waited on hold for 73 minutes, listening to the same looping jingle punctuated by the promise, "Your call is important to us." When someone finally answered, they asked him to submit a form, in triplicate, with attached documentation proving the error. He mailed it the next day. Nothing ever came of it. And all the while, Ronnie kept smiling that crooked smile. Aaron saw it again a week later when he went in person, despite the effort it took to walk, leaning on his cane like it was the last thing keeping him from collapsing. Ronnie looked up from behind the counter, scanned the prescription, and said, "Looks like we're a bit short on inventory this week, Mr. McClellan. Sorry about that." Aaron's eyes locked on his. In that moment, there was no veil of incompetence, only the glint of casual power. Ronnie enjoyed this, the withholding, the control. That night, Aaron didn't sleep. The pain was fire, licking at his bones. He thought of calling an ambulance, but what would they do? Pump him with something temporary, send him home again. He sat at his kitchen table and stared at the notebook. Each entry was a cry in ink, unanswered. He flipped back to the first page. 6 months ago. Claire's handwriting next to his, sharp and slanted. 2 bottles missing. March 3rd. He traced the letters with a shaking finger, then closed the book. What happens to a man when justice is not only denied, but erased from the ledger altogether? Outside, the night held its breath, and Aaron, for the first time in weeks, let his anger settle, not like a fire, but like iron in his blood, heavy, unyielding, not rage, not despair, resolve. The mobile unit thrummed with quiet efficiency, like a field hospital dropped into a forgotten war zone. Aaron, propped in a recliner that the medics brought in themselves, stared with a mixture of disbelief and exhaustion as machines beeped softly around him. His body, once rigid with pain, began to loosen its clenched muscles under the medication's gentle return. He hadn't realized just how tightly he'd been gripping the edge of consciousness until that grip released. Captain Reese stood nearby, arms crossed, eyes flicking between the IV drip and the biometric tablet. She wasn't there for show. She asked pointed questions, took notes herself. When Claire handed her the notebook Aaron had kept, Reese leafed through the entries without a word, her jaw tightening with each page. "This is systemic," she finally said. "This isn't some clerk making a mistake. This is neglect." Aaron looked at her, the lines around his eyes deep with both gratitude and pain. "It's been 6 months," he murmured, voice hoarse. "They just let it happen." Reese didn't offer comfort. She offered something rarer, belief. Not anymore. Outside, the Humvees stood sentinel under the flat Texas sun. Curious neighbors had begun to gather, drifting toward the trailer in cautious clusters. First, just to see, then to speak. Veterans, mostly. Old men with walkers, women who had buried husbands, kids holding photos of fathers in uniform. One by one, they approached Claire, asked if Aaron was okay, and then shared their own stories. Missing paperwork, denied claims, lost records. Everyone had something. The spiral that had engulfed Aaron wasn't his alone. It had coiled through the town like smoke through vents, unseen, unspoken, choking people in silence. But now it was visible, tactile, photographed, shared. Reese stepped outside and addressed the crowd. "We're not here on orders from Washington," she said, her voice carrying. "We came because someone did the right thing and made noise. The system works for those who scream the loudest, and too many veterans have been taught not to scream." She turned to Claire. "You screamed, loud enough for people to hear." Claire nodded, tears streaking silently down her cheeks. By evening, the medics had organized everything. Aaron had a care schedule. The prescriptions were rerouted through Fort Hood's pharmacy. An attorney from a local veterans advocacy group appeared, documents in hand. They would be filing a formal grievance with the Office of Accountability and Whistleblower Protection. No more unanswered calls, no more silence. Inside his trailer, Aaron watched the last rays of sunlight hit the photograph on the wall. His younger self, flanked by brothers in arms. The old guilt of survival, of being the one who made it back, hadn't left him. But something new stirred in the ashes of that pain. Not forgiveness, not yet, but clarity. The spiral had nearly swallowed him. But now it had a name, a face, and most importantly, resistance. He shifted in his chair, wincing slightly, and whispered to no one in particular, "I didn't think anyone would come." From the next room, Claire's voice, "They didn't. You brought them." The reckoning began not with fire or fury, but with quiet consequences that could not be escaped. Ronnie sat alone in the back of a courtroom. His once cocky posture now collapsed into a slouch of embarrassment and fear. The evidence had been damning. Grainy security footage that captured the flick of his wrist as he discarded a sealed bottle, his lips curling into a smirk so fleeting it might have been missed, if not for the context, the aftermath, the pain that smirk inflicted. The courtroom wasn't packed. There was no media frenzy within the walls. Those had long since moved on, but a few key faces sat in the pews. Claire, with arms folded, unblinking. A pair of VA officials, stone-faced, and two older men wearing VFW caps, chins lifted like sentinels. The air carried a gravity Ronnie hadn't expected. This wasn't just about him. It never had been. It was about the invisible weight of 1,000 small betrayals, all condensed into a single name, McClellan. Ronnie's sentencing came swiftly. The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The tone of the ruling was precise, deliberate. "You didn't just harm one man," he said. "You harmed faith, in systems, in institutions, in duty itself." Tampering with medication for personal convenience or spite wasn't just unethical. It was criminal. And now it would be punished accordingly. At the VA pharmacy, things had shifted fast. Policy meetings that had once dragged for months accelerated into urgent overhauls. Third-party verification wasn't just a checkbox. It was implemented with real oversight. External auditors reviewed 6 months of past prescriptions, uncovering a disturbing pattern of apathy hidden beneath bureaucratic jargon. Heads rolled. Trainings were restructured. The apology letter, written in the personal hand of the director himself, was delivered by courier. And yet Aaron, characteristically, didn't keep it for display. He handed it to the VFW post, and across the top of that now-framed letter, in unmistakable red Sharpie, he'd written, "This is what happens when we fight back." Captain Reese knew that change built on single victories never lasted. So she stayed, not out of charity, but mission. She lobbied county officials. She rerouted surplus equipment from inactive National Guard units. She sat down with hospital administrators who hadn't seen a mobile military unit since Katrina. Operation Honor Watch wasn't just a name, it was a statement. A shield for those too old or too sick to raise one themselves. As Aaron's strength waned, something else grew stronger. The attention he had sparked became a network. Veterans who had once lived in the long shadow of silence began stepping forward. They were met not with tape or wait lists, but with vans rolling down gravel roads, nurses knocking gently, not urgently, on front doors. When the end came, Aaron met it on his terms. His dog, Bailey, rested beside him, tail twitching as dreams played behind her eyes. The worn flag that once flew from his platoon's base camp in Da Nang lay folded on the nightstand. Claire was there. So was Reese. So were 3 neighbors, a chaplain, and a boy from down the road who had once fixed Aaron's fence. The convoy that bore his name rolled out weeks later. On the driver's side door of every truck, a new decal had been affixed. It read simply, McClellan Initiative. Because one voice can echo through silence. And echo it did.